a little delayed. We've got I got to be my own self again. Yay. Not that I didn't want to be Brock Corral. Sorry.
No offense taken.
No offense taken. So I know that the deputy mayor was probably a few minutes late in joining us, and Councillor Ohlke has a conflict, so he's not going to be part of this meeting. And Brian maybe is still on his way home from work. So we can't get started for sure until we have the deputy mayor. But we'll just wait patiently. Thank you, Mr. Tao. Sorry, we are delaying the meeting somewhat.
Oh, that's all right. I'm at home anyway, so.
I guess that's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So this is your first go around at the Zoom meeting, or have you done a few of the meetings already?
We've done a few, but most of our public meetings have started at 6. So I think that there was some cross confusion thinking that this was going to start at 6. But anyways, we got one counselor straightened around. The other one's still on his way home from work. So.
Oh, we're so good at it now too. We're just, I know, I'm. Yeah.
See, Mark, yeah. Two essentials, and right behind you there, a Canadian flag and a cane. That's
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Hey, cane, whack.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
I'll move the cane. The cane. Are we in the public domain?
Yep, and we're live with YouTube, so don't swear at me.
No, I wasn't planning. I was just going to say the flag is covering a water heater because I'm in the basement because the construction is going on and it's a little noisy. So.
Oh, I see. Oh.
Yeah.
Brian just came into the building. He'll only be a couple of minutes teaming up there.
Okay, great.
Well, I can faithfully report that the Room Mills Road was graded this morning, and then after grading, got it because it's very dusty. It's limestone and it's a fresh road, you know, and it was treated today. So my dust problem and everyone's dust problem on the Room Mills Road is mitigated, and I thank the staff.
We'll have to make that.
It was pretty tough here. It was pretty tough up here. Limestone.
Yeah.
Yep. Who's up first? I guess it's Mr. Ohlke, is it?
Mr.
Yes.
Ohlke, and then Mr. Is it Rogers? I can't remember.
Hodges.
Mhm.
Mr. Hodges.
Hodges, sorry, wrong one.
Okay.
That's right.
I was close. Not quite, not quite, but close.
So, Mark, you're okay with sharing your screen and everything to do the PowerPoint?
Yeah, we'll give it a go.
Okay.
It should be okay.
You might have done 1 or 2 of these meetings.
Yeah, I've done a few in the city of Kingston. I had a 3-hour-long public meeting last month, I guess. So
Wow.
hopefully this won't be that long.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good, yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, you too.
Looks like you might be in the basement too, Mark.
Yeah, this is kind of the way to get some peace, but I don't know. We'll see. I apologize in advance for any yelling or screaming from the kids. So.
And that's why I come to this office to work every day, because that's exactly what would happen at my house.
Yeah, I'm kind of 50-50 at this point between the office and at home. So depending on the childcare situation any given day. So it's been interesting. So.
Okay, so we're just waiting for Mr. Maybe to log on. Once we have Mr. Maybe, we will have quorum and we can move forward. And then the deputy mayor might join us in amongst that time frame as well. Obviously, Mr. Ohlke has declared conflict. He will not be on the meeting this evening.
Is it that Mr. Ohlke? Is it?
The
There are
one
so many,
and the
there are
only.
so many, there are so many. He's
Okay,
probably watching.
somehow Brian maybe is Brock Grell.
All right.
Everybody drew the lucky card
That's
tonight.
interesting. That is interesting. Hey, Brock,
be floating
you're
around
double
there.
named there. That's interesting.
Get a haircut.
Say whatever you want, Brian. You won't be held accountable.
Oh, well, you know, it is my pandemic haircut.
Okay, so since we have quorum now, I'm just gonna pull up. So my agenda went to sleep. I apologize. So we'll call this meeting to order, and it's at 5:37 p.m. on June the 8th. So I'm just going to ask for any declarations of any conflict of interest or general nature thereof. Please state it now if you have any conflicts. Seeing none, we will move on in the agenda. And great, I've got the wrong agenda up. So the purpose of the meeting is the first zoning application that's on the floor is Z-2020-003 Ohlke IBI Group, Thomas Road. And before we go forward with that application, I'll just read the blurb from the Planning Act, as I always do. Personal information collected at this public hearing is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments are collected and form part of the minutes which are available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning, Marnie Venditti. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant or staff, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be open to the public for comments and questions. When you speak, please provide your name and address for the recording in the minutes. All comments should be directed to myself, the chair of the meeting. The applicant will be provided the opportunity to address public questions once all members of the public have made their submissions. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. Public meeting reports are provided to inform the public of all relevant information. Information gathered is considered by the planning staff in the review of an application. For the applications being presented tonight, a report and recommendation are being presented to council for the applications. Following a council decision, notice will be given and circulated in accordance with the Planning Act. If a person or public body would have an ability to appeal the decision of council to the local planning appeal tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the township before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. So now that I've got that out of the way, I do recognize we have two attendees other than the participants in the meeting, Cody Hodges and Jerry McConnell. So we will ask the gallery, as they are the attendees, for their comments once we have those applications up, if they're here in support or in their here for their own application. So we'll move forward with Z 2020-003 Ohlke IBI Group. So Mark, I guess we will unmute Mark and then you can speak to this application, or do you want to speak first, Marnie? Okay, we'll let Mark go ahead and then go from there.
All right, thank you. Let me just switched over. So I'm going to share my screen and I'll walk you through a brief slide show, and then we can answer any questions you may have. So as noted, this is a statutory public meeting for a zoning bylaw amendment for 90 Thomas Road. And the purpose of the zoning amendment is to allow the existing lot, which is a rural parcel, to be developed as a single detached dwelling, allow future development of small agricultural buildings, and also through the zoning amendment to implement the official plan for the property by zoning a water course on the property as floodplain. So subject property is located on the south side of Thomas Road, just west of Highway 15, north of Seeley's Bay. It's a fairly large parcel. To the immediate west, you can see on the screen, there's a bedrock quarry. It's underneath the label. It's a small, very kind of long-standing quarry that is minimally used. There are also aggregate resources to the east, on the east side of Highway 15. And otherwise, the area is fairly rural with agricultural uses and some limited rural residential as well. The site itself is at 75 hectares. It's got 425 meters of frontage on Thomas Road, and the lot's about 1.5 kilometers deep. And accesses from Thomas Road. In the existing use is agricultural. The owner has a few small beehives on the property right now, as you can see in the image. And then there's a tiled field as well. And then the remainder is forest or naturalized areas. So the area in question where a portion of the property is proposed to be rezoned is the northeast corner. So the lot itself right now is in a mineral resource bedrock zone, and the proposal is to rezone just a 1.5 acre portion of the northeast corner to allow for a dwelling, accessory structures to be built there. And the intention of that is to limit the potential for future interference with aggregate extraction activities, particularly the quarry to the west or other activities to the east and east side of Highway 15. So rather than rezoning the whole parcel, we're just going to limit the area where a dwelling could be built so that potential impacts on aggregate resources are minimized or eliminated. In this image as well, just in the south side, you can see a clearing. So currently there is an access into the property through a dirt road and an existing entrance, and the owner has some beehives in this area, and this would be the approximate area where future agricultural buildings, like only one, but just small, modest agricultural buildings would be constructed associated with the apiary. The rest of the property would just continue to be farmed as it is today for cash crop. So we reviewed the application against the provincial policy statement and policies of the official plan. We found that the application is consistent with the PPS, noting in particular the scale development is compatible with the rural landscape. It does protect aggregate resources from incompatible development. The zoning will recognize natural hazard areas being the floodplain associated with the creek, and there are no negative impacts to public health and safety anticipated as a result. In the official plans, this is the township official plan. The application is consistent with the policies of the OP. It's designated rural and then environmental protection where the water course is concerned. So there are a number of tests associated with the rural designation. The rezoning does satisfy those tests. Briefly, the county official plan is also satisfied. There are no detailed policies in the county OP that are different or more stringent than the local OP. So in terms of aggregate resource protection, the local OP policies would apply, and they provide for the same level of protection, which is satisfied. So in our opinion, the request conforms to the both local and county official plans. And then with respect to the zoning bylaw specifically, this schedule shows the existing MRB mineral resource bedrock -1 zone that currently applies to the property. So it's a site-specific zone that was applied about 12 years ago, I believe, that placed the property in a specific zone to prevent development of a dwelling on the property. And that was specifically tied to the severance of parcels here to the east. The intention there was to protect aggregate resources from incompatible uses. So the proposal now is to rezone the property to allow a dwelling in the northeast corner in a fashion that would continue to allow those aggregate resources to be protected as the separation distances between the resources are preserved, and there are other residential uses that are closer to or would present a similar requirement for evaluation if an aggregate resource needed to be developed further. And then the parcel here in the northeast corner will be changed to an RU-45 zone to allow the site-specific, to allow the residential use. And the MRB-1 zone would just be modified to allow for a residential use on this portion of the property. And then currently the creek here in the floodplain isn't zoned, it's just all zoned as mineral resource bedrock. So the rezoning would specifically zone the floodplain associated with the creek consistent with the new official plan. So as I noted, the justification for allowing the residential dwelling with respect to the aggregate resources is that on the whole, there would be no or limited potential for impact on aggregate resources in the area. The adjacent quarry to the west is very small scale. The owner has spoken with the operator and very limited use. There's not much resource left to be extracted at any kind of economic scale. The property itself associated with the quarry is also quite small, so the ability to expand it is also very limited. And there are also a number of other residential dwellings or residences in the area. And so the principle is that if you have other residences close by or between the subject property and another aggregate resource, if the aggregate resource needs to be extracted or expanded upon, the presence of these other existing dwellings would already require the aggregate resource to make sure it doesn't have a negative impact. So the addition of one additional dwelling in the area isn't or wouldn't constitute a new barrier to extracting those resources. So on the whole, our opinion is that the amendments are appropriate as they're consistent with the PPS, the official plan policies, and they're compatible with adjacent land uses, and it represents good planning and is in the public interest. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them if I can, or I can refer them and get back to you with the answers in the future.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tao. I'm going to ask Ms. Venditti if you want to add anything to that before I take any questions. Go ahead.
Thanks, through your worship. Notice for this meeting was provided in accordance with the Planning Act. So mail was sent out to all landowners within 120 meters of the property, and signage was posted on the property. In response to the advertisement, we did receive one letter of support for the application. Staff have reviewed the application and there is a recommendation on council's agenda this evening. We have no concerns with the application and happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Councillor Foti, I'll recognize you first, and then Councillor Garrell.
Thank you. Through you to Mr. Tao. I gather the footprint, the resource pits leave, distance isn't an issue in this case, right? Like there's a number of pits around, and I'm reading what was presented to us as far as the 300-meter setback. That doesn't really apply other than to that one small pit you referred to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah. So there's the quarry to the immediate west, and then there are a number of designated lands in the area, and they would fall within the 300-meter radius. But because of the existing residential in the area already, the introduction of an additional dwelling isn't anticipated to result in any further kind of requirements or restrictions on being able to access or extract any of those resources. So the official plan policies have a test that says if a new sensitive use such as residential is proposed in proximity to an aggregate resource, essentially you must demonstrate that that new use isn't going to prohibit the economic extraction of the resource. So because of the existing residential in the area, that was our opinion, was that one new additional residence isn't going to rise to the level of creating a new test or a new challenge to be able to extract the resource.
Go ahead, follow up.
Just to follow up on a different topic, with most aggregate pits, is water going to be an issue here, like drilling a well, or is there a good water table not that deep? Or do you know?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. That I'm not aware of. We haven't, the owners own the property for a few years now, and from what we understand, there aren't any known well water issues in the area. There are pits in the Sealy's Bay area that I believe do go below the water table, but I'm not aware of any well water issues in this area.
Well, okay, thank you. I suspect this won't be a problem either, given the proximity of the two closest neighbors there. I don't know that there's water issues there, but I suspect not. I know that the applicant, I'm sure, has checked into this a lot further than I would. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
I will recognize Councillor Garrell.
Okay. One question, we are being asked to also on the MRB-1 site specific, leaving aside the 1.5 acres for the house, we are being asked to change the exemptions there to allow for agricultural use building. At this time, that building's going to be something to do with the bees, which is wonderful. The apiary, definitely an allowed situation under agricultural use. But my question would be, in the future, sale of the property and so on, a barn or something, a larger structure could be put on the property. Someone who had other ideas, is that also possible? And would that conflict with that quarry, the setbacks? How would that work out in future years? Thank you.
Ms. Venditti, you want to answer that?
Thank you, through your worship. So the zoning allows for, the recommended zoning allows for accessory buildings that would be consistent with a rural use, subject to the setback provisions and the uses in the rural zone. Right now, the existing zoning would allow for a riding stable and other buildings, so there's no real concern about agricultural buildings. In terms of the MRB zone, it still would not allow for residential use. Setback would still apply to between any extraction that could potentially happen on that property in the future and any surrounding residential uses. But there is an exemption built into the recommended zone to exempt the RU 45, which is the area where the dwelling is proposed to be located, so that there's no conflict between the zoning on the property itself.
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Gross?
Yeah, again, it's the zoning of the property or the rezoning to rural for the house and so on is fine. I was thinking of the property. It looks like it's heavily wooded, and I just wondered, a future buyer, a future owner of that property, they would also be able to, because we are going to redesignate the use for specifically our MRB-1 later this evening. So it would allow different types of buildings, agricultural use buildings, to be put on that property.
As long as they met all the setbacks and regular expectations, I think.
I think that's a good thing. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further questions in regards to this application? Mr. Maybe?
Thank you, Worshipman, through you. It's good to see that we're going to get some more tax dollars out of this piece of property. It is well suited for that. So I'm glad to see that it's moving forward. And in saying that, this applicant has been before, council before, to actually get something moving on this. So I'm quite happy to see that inroads have been made to ensure that the property can be utilized in its potential. And yes, the agricultural land could certainly suffice a maple syrup sap house too. So that would be cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maybe. Councillor Fody?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I can't help but respond to Councillor Maybe. You looking to franchise out, or? But my question I meant to ask at the start, I have a little conflicting on two different papers here. Is this application come under 2020-002 or 2020-003? Because I have one of each. I just think we need to clarify that before we pass it, that's all.
In the agenda, it says 2020-003.
Okay. Because I have papers here that were presented to us, and I have one of each. In the planning report, it's referred to as 002, and yet on the application report over here, it's referred to as 003. I just wanted that for clarification.
Yeah, the planning report says 003. I'm not sure where you're seeing 002, Councillor Fody, just so that we can have it corrected.
I can show it to you this way. It shows on the planning report here. And but it does show a 002 on there.
Okay, we'll get that sorted, but it's probably just a clerical error, but it's a good catch just in case.
Well, that's really why I mentioned it. I just don't want to see us pass something that turns out to be erroneous later.
Fair enough. Okay, Ms. Venditti?
Through your worship, just for clarification, it's 2020-003.
003. Okay, so we are discussing 2020-003. Further questions or queries in regards to this application for Mr. Tao? Seeing none, we will move. Sorry?
Jerry McConnell is.
Oh, I apologize. Yes. So, Mr. McConnell, would you like to speak to this? We're going to unmute your microphone, and if you'd like to speak for or against or ask any questions, you will have the opportunity to do so. Can we unmute him? There we go. Mr. McConnell, you're unmuted now.
Hi. I have no issues with somebody buying the place and building a residence on it. I think it'd be good for the community and everybody involved. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for your input, Mr. McConnell. And the other attendee, I believe, is there for his own application, which is next in line. So seeing that there's no other attendees in the gallery for this application, we will move forward. And so we will move forward with Z-2020-005, Hodges, 177 Warburton Road. And I will ask the planner to just introduce this, and then we'll ask Mr. Hodges to speak to his application. Go ahead.
Thank you, through your worship. This is an application for zoning bylaw amendment to rezone a portion of the property from wrecking yard to agriculture. To make this zoning amendment would make the zoning consistent with the official plan, as well as allow the applicants the opportunity to expand the dwelling on the property that's currently a legal non-conforming use. So under the existing zoning that applies to the property, they would require committee of adjustment approval for any modifications to the structure going forward. So this application essentially brings the zoning in line to recognize the existing use of the property and make it consistent with the official plan. Notice was provided in accordance with the Planning Act, and there's been no response to any of the notifications that were sent out, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Anything to what the planner has just said, and then we'll take questions from the councillors and any public if there's no other public. So can we bring Mr. Hodges into the meeting and see if he has anything to add? Oh, that's not a Mr. I apologize. That's a lady. So is this Cody?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay,
go ahead. I don't think you look like your picture. I'm going to take a guess.
No, it's probably my wife that you might. So
go ahead.
I just want to say thank you for taking your time to listen to our application. We're hoping we can get it passed. I don't know, most of you probably know the area, but it hasn't been used as a wrecking yard for a long time.
That is correct. So
from
yeah, Mr. Hodges, we were having trouble hearing you. I'm going to assume that you're having some issues with your rural internet, maybe. I think we're having some delays even here at the municipal office. So maybe what we'll do is we'll take the questions for now and see if we can hear him. And if not, then we might have to have him call in just to speak to his application. Are there any questions in regards to this application? Mr. Maybe, Mr. Lackey, Mr. Fody. So I'll recognize Councillor Maybe first.
Thank you, Your Worshipman, through you. This land used to be O'Grady's yard. So my first question is, has it been cleared, even though it hasn't been a wrecking yard for many years? I do remember actually going there for parts at one time for vehicles. So my question is, has the land been cleared of all remnants of those days? And has it been tested for any contaminants? Because again, it's been a while, and protocols weren't quite what they are nowadays. So again, the question comes to the Safe Water Act, whether there's any issues to be actually looked at there. And with that, I noticed that it does need a new septic bed to acquire for the building permit. So they would also be asking the same question. So if there's any answers to that, I would love to hear them. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take the questions first. So septic and contaminants and then we'll go to Mr. Hodges once we have all the questions. So just if you can be concise with your questions, we would appreciate it. Go ahead, Mr. Lackey, Deputy Mayor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I think some of that property goes through the pipeline on the back end, not that it's very close, but did they have any comments? Because I didn't see them on the report.
Ms. Venditti, I believe that the application did identify that it was there, but there wasn't any supporting or refuting documentation at that point.
Through Your Worship, no, there were no comments received. That's fairly typical in the case where there's no significant new development proposed. So when it comes to the pipelines commenting, I can also address the question that Councillor maybe asked with respect to the environmental on the site. Given that we're rezoning the property to allow for a residential use from a wrecking yard zone, my first question was, does it need a record of site condition? So we did check with the Ministry of Environment to see, and they indicated that given the length of time since the property had been used for a wrecking yard, based on their regulations, that there was no requirement for a record of site condition to be performed on the property.
Okay, so that's good. And then the septic question, that I guess that ties into the same thing, because the question was, would they be allowed to put a septic in? So if the MOE is fine with it, then it should be no problem with the health unit as well.
And the health unit will need to review and sign off on any septic permits prior to the issuance of building permits.
Fair enough. Okay, Mr. Lackey, did you have any further questions, or was that everything? No. Okay, and then Mr. Fody, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you. This is in close proximity to where I've spent all my life. I know this property reasonably well. I just checked for historical purposes. Literally a graveyard will do that for you. This property has not been in a wrecking yard working position since 1989. That's when that owner passed away. And shortly thereafter, that property was sold. I believe the very first buyer at that time cleaned it all up. Scrap metal had a value at the time, and he brought in an outside company, and they dispersed of everything there. And it's pretty much been in an agricultural state ever since. I visited these owners here a few days back. Their well, which I thought was still located in the front lawn, and it's fine and reasonably new, and they do intend to build a new septic based on what their application purposes are. But to me, this is a pretty straightforward proposition.
Okay. Any further questions before we take comments from Mr. Hodges? Mr. Hodges, do you have anything to add to the comments or questions that have been made?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. So just in regards to some of your questions, the health unit was here and did their inspection on the septic tank. I have received the documents back from them as to the requirements, what the distances need to be from the well and the building. So I can certainly send that off to whomever needs it, if they haven't done that for you guys already. As far as I know, I think you answered already. There was no issues with having to have any testing done because of the length of time it's been
Mr. Hodges, I think we've lost you.
You will find that you wouldn't even know what's right here.
Okay, I know that we lost you a little bit there, but it sounds like everything has been tested and is in order. Would that be correct, Mr. Hodges? Gotta love rural broadband. Hopefully we'll be able to address that tonight. There's also the chat box. I believe that if you go to the bottom of your screen, Mr. Hodges, for some reason you're cutting out. If you want to put in the chat box.
You keep cutting in and out.
Okay, I'm just gonna put, so I'm gonna type in here. I'm just gonna put that we have no further questions.
Madam Mayor,
Yes?
Mr. Hodges is gone. He's not.
Oh, okie dokie. Well, not a perfect system, but this is the system that we have to work with right at the moment. Do you want to wait 2 minutes to see if he calls in, just in case? Maybe. But I think based on the questions that have been asked, the major concern being the wrecking yard previously have been addressed, and that it is for a new septic bed, so that they should be able to do that without needing a minor variance, correct, Madam Planner?
That's correct. With the zoning amendment, they won't need committee of adjustment approvals every time they want to change something on the property.
Fair enough. Okay, well, seeing that we've exhausted our poor attendee, unless there's any further questions for the record. Seeing none, I will put a motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Maybe, seconded by Councillor Foti, that the public meeting adjourn. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed? Carried. Okay, so yay, yay, yay. Yay and yay. Okay, so that this meeting is adjourned, so we will come off of, oh, Mr. Jameson, before we go to the next meeting, because that will be a separate link.
That's all I'm trying to figure out here. So the link we have for council for the 6:30 meeting is now up, and we just go to that one. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you, thank you.
Mr. Hodges, just to let you know, we've already adjourned our meeting, but I think we got everything we needed, just in case. I don't want you to worry that we didn't hear your answers. We didn't hear everything, but I think that the panelists are satisfied. So, but we will let you know here shortly after our meeting. Okay. Okay, so we'll adjourn this meeting, Madam Clerk, and then we'll move to the council meeting at 6:30. Thank you.
Thank you.